Um, we're done with politics for the week. Let me clear this up, make this look spiffy. Hmm. Um, I'm currently watching legendary Kevin Samuels, and although I'm not religious, bless that man for dealing with these ratchets. You would not have me up all night talking to some ratchets trying to do that. I feel bad the few times I've done live streams and I've gone to like 4 or 5 in the morning. I did it once talking to some idiot, and then because he couldn't understand something, he insulted me. And then after I banned him because he was getting out of pocket, he came back 5, 6 times under different usernames just to troll. So I will never do that again. Um, Shame that Kevin Samuels ruined his health staying up all night while also having a a daytime gig as well to do, talking to these silly people. So I will not make that mistake. I think a lot of us coming out of either the red pill spaces, the manosphere spaces, the black male spaces have realized from what Kevin Samuels went through that we won't do that, what he did, and put ourselves, our health at risk like he did to talk to these people. Um, but right now I am watching something on his channel. Yes, new stuff still comes on his channel. Obviously, he's not still alive, but they're the people behind his estate are still like editing his older content and putting it out in a newer form for people to digest who haven't seen it previously. Or they may have seen it previously, but they just decided that they want to see this newer form. Help me stay up though. I'm gonna use actual coffee. I will not ever drink Red Bull or any of those other little toxic energy drinks that he was drinking. But it's Friday night and we're gonna get into something fun. We're gonna get into something very nerdy, and if people don't like it, that's fine. That means I'll just get off early, because you guys know I don't care about getting off early from the screen if it's not a banger. So the question is, on Friday night, how do you know that you, yes, you exist? How do you know that you exist? Are we gonna get into it? We're gonna go full Cartesian here, full Rene Descartes. It's gonna take us into modern philosophy with a vengeance. How do you know you're not just a brain in a vat? How do you know you're not just a computer simulation? How do you know you're not you're not just being deceived by a evil demon, which was the original the original thought experiment proposed by Rene Descartes, who is the father of modern philosophy. Um, yeah, so we can get into it. Let me change my filter so I can get off all my messages, but I will also be ignoring. If you don't want to weigh in on the topic, that's fine. But I won't be changing the topic to random questions that people give me unless they drop it in the form of a super chat or in the form of a super sticker. If you don't drop a super chat or a super sticker and you ask me a random question, I'm just going to ignore it. I'm not going to answer random stuff about Diddy or about whom I'm voting for, because I've answered all those questions in previous streams and videos. So if you come in here for that, go jump into another stream with some other special ed person to bounce your inane ideas off of. I'm doing a very nerdy topic right now, and everything people have asked me, I've already answered on other days. So uh, the question is, how do you know that you exist? I think the better question might be, can you know? But I'll stick with the way I phrased it in the headline. The question is, how do you know that you exist? But you can also ask the question, can you even know that you exist? And some people might think that's completely incoherent. And I assure you, it's actually not an incoherent question at all. And the answer, if there is an answer, might surprise you. If there is an answer, it will be a surprising one. Mind you, this is of such a question that it formed the basis of modern philosophy. This formed my like if you go into a philosophy 101 class, this is the meat and bones. This is where like you do the you start off first in the ancient Greek philosophy, the pre-Socratics, um, from people like Diogenes and all that sort of stuff. Then you get into like the Socratic philosophers like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. Then you might jump into the medieval scholastic philosophers like Saint Augustine, Saint Thomas Aquinas, yada yada yada. And I'll tell you straight up, the medieval scholar philosophy is the most boring shit out of all of it. But then you get into modern philosophy, and that's when you feel like, hey, once you start doing the modern philosophy, this is where you feel like, okay, now my tuition, now this now my tuition feel like is justified, right? Before then, it's like, yeah, okay, this is cool. This is more historical shit. Modern philosophy is still historical philosophy per se, because current philosophy is like 20th, 21st century analytic philosophy, whatever, or continental 20th century philosophy. But the meat and bones starts in that modern philosophy era. And it starts with Rene Descartes and this question, how do you know that you exist? Juice still says, yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. Joe Blow says, some people like to be in the shadows. Yeah. Justo says, how do we know that reality isn't just a projection created by our brain? Exactly. Exactly. Because the question is also not how do you know we exist, but can you even know that we exist? Then a further question is, does anyone actually exist? Um, Donzi says, I think therefore I am. That is the common quote attributed to Rene Descartes, even though it's actually not exactly what he said. We're going to get into that too. Um, Press Play says, is reality something that exists beyond our perception, or is it shaped by our minds? Maybe it's both. What is truly real? And Moist and White says, damn, what did you smoke, my dudes? No, I assure you, Moist and White, funny name though, is that this is actual philosophy. This is when we get into like metaphysics from, say, the 16th and 17th century. This is such a question like this started modern philosophy under Rene Descartes, who was a philosopher, mathematician, logician, and scientist. He was a contemporary of Galileo. Okay, and like Galileo, he was a polymath. Unlike Galileo, he knew not to piss off the church. um, Muhammad says, "I just lost my best customer. He was buying a lot of baby oil." Well, that's funny. Manak Pandy says, "India." Sorry, let me. Celestial says, "We value your opinion." Okay, I appreciate that. So, again, at the time, Descartes was living under. I'm gonna have to be consulting my other phone here for information here and there because we're talking about stuff I haven't studied in 24 years. Well, 22 years maybe. Hopefully, I'm gonna have Mrs. Contrarian help me moderate. Okay. Um, so when I so the, like I said, Descartes was a polymath. Like most people know him as a philosopher, but he was also a mathematician. If you don't know he was a mathematician, just think back to your geometry class. The In geometry, remember we had to do the Cartesian coordinate system. He invented that. He invented the Cartesian coordinate system. His um his his take on geometry was the precursor for calculus. Okay, before he came along and developed analytic geometry. Geometry was mostly like it, it, it wasn't as formal as it is now, but he created analytic geometry and the Cartesian coordinate system, which became the precursor to calculus. Okay, he did work in physics, particularly in optics. He did some work in biology. Okay, uh, and of course he did his work in philosophy. He was under the one of the royals. I think trying to think. It's like the the Dutch or someone that he was working under, but through them he was able to do his research. Let me see. So who did Descartes work for? Yeah, I was right. So he worked for the Dutch. I remember my stuff, man. So he worked for the Dutch States Army under the command of Prince Maurice of Nassau as a mercenary, where he pursued military engineering studies and further developed his knowledge of mathematics while serving in Breda, Netherlands. He later also served in the army of the Catholic Duke Maximilian of Bavaria. So he originally wanted to be a military officer. So a lot of people don't understand that. So people think a lot of these philosophy people are just have their head in the stars and don't realize a lot of these people were also athletic and in the military. Like people don't know, like so many people don't know that Socrates was a war hero. Socrates was a war hero, and he was a veteran and um, commanded um, a a small leadership in Athens all the way into his 40s. Like as much as people consulted him about philosophy, they also consulted him about military strategy. People don't know that about Socrates. The man was part Rambo, part Einstein, and part. Mm, well, actually, I was going to say he was part. Um, I forgot the little detective guy, but then I realized that detective actually gets his stuff from Socrates, so never mind that. Um, but his, Renee's time in the military is what allowed him to work on his philosophical ideas. Again, I was also someone in the military while I was in school, double majoring in philosophy and psychology, and then later a triple major with linguistics. Um, this is just to give a little background, but to keep things from getting too complicated here, I'm gonna say as a proviso when we use the word reality, we're not gonna get too caught up in talking about dimensions and different and alternate existences and stuff like that. We're gonna say for reality, for the sake of this discussion, we're gonna limit reality to being the way things actually are. So when we're referring to reality here in this discussion, we're gonna limit it to saying talking about reality. It's just the way things actually are. So that way we don't have to get into confusing talk about alternate realities and alternate existences and all this sort of stuff. It's going to get very confusing very quickly if we do so. All right. Um, what's up, Mahal? What's up, Mrs. Contrarian? It's my wifey, guys. Um, so I'm gonna get all the way back to what Donzi, I think that's how you say your name, Donzi. He says, "I think, therefore I am." So that's a comment quote attributed to Rene Descartes, and it's actually not exactly what he said. So first of all, it's not going to be entirely correct because often what happens is these philosophers have said a mouthful, and then people want to come and make it into a very pithy quote that people can use and you know, put it on a T-shirt. So it is a pithy quote, but that's not exactly what he said. And again, you have to take it from medieval French. What he did say in at the time, in sort of a medieval era, Renaissance era French, whatever, he said, when I look about me, I see, that, I see before me, myself or whatever. And I'm paraphrasing, guys. Okay, so this is not his exact words. I'm just paraphrasing. But again, he was saying, when I look about me, I see, I can observe the external world, and I remarked that I am a part of the external world, making these observations and stuff like that. But what if someone's playing a trick on me? He said, what if there's like some sort of evil demon out there, or we might say mad scientist in our day, right? But evil demon or evil spirit that's playing a trick on me, that's making me think that all the stuff I see about me is real when it's all just really just an hallucination or a bad dream. How would I know that everything, all this, this external world, everything that I see about me is real? How would I know that I'm even real? Like what, what, on what foundation could I say that I actually exist? It's like I can. It's like even if I think, well, yeah, this I'm actually here, I exist. I could be wrong. However, the fact that I can be wrong means I can doubt my existence. If I can doubt or think about it in that sort of way, then there has to be some sort of thinking thing that can do the doubting, that can do the thinking, that can worry about this sort of thing. So that thinking thing must exist. And I am that thinking thing that is doing it. So I must exist. That was what he, that's pretty much what he actually said. But again, that wouldn't fit on the t shirt now, would it? um, he was partially right and partially wrong. He was right to infer that there is an actual thinking thing out there that can have these doubts and thoughts and worries and beliefs. Where he took a where where there was a logical jump was he then inferring that that thinking thing was he himself. He there wasn't enough. There was no premise within that argument to make the logical jump from saying there is a thinking thing to saying that he himself is that thinking thing. So he's partially right and partially wrong. But from that, he gave his sort of his foundational epistemology on which he built his system of beliefs, right? And became the pillar of modern philosophy. Some say for the best, for the better, some say for the worse. I'll leave that for you guys to determine, but that was the his that found on that foundation is which he rested all his other beliefs, that he is that there's a thinking thing and he is that thinking thing. Now we can go from there. Let me catch up with the comments. Um, Heaven McNulty said hi. What's up, Heaven? Manek says, "What is the time in your country?" It is 9:48 Eastern Standard Time p.m. Moisten White says, "Conciseness is a crazy thing." Are you saying conciseness or consciousness? I'm not sure which one you're referring to. Downsy says, "Talk about Democritus. I had to write a paper on him a decade ago." Democritus doesn't figure into this conversation though. His talk on atoms and all that sort of stuff. That's pre-Socratic philosophy. That's a whole different topic. Tanzi says, "Did you study philosophy?" Yes, I have uh, a background, considerable academic background in it. Manex says, "In India, the time is 7:15 a.m." Okay. Sophie says, "Hey, how old are you?" Moisten White says, "Vsauce has a great video on conciseness." Again, are you talking about conciseness as in conciseness in writing and arguments, or are you saying consciousness? I'm not sure if you mean consciousness or conciseness. Either one is not directly relevant to this discussion. Um, Donzi says, "Back in those days, most STEM guys were also philosophers." Well, some STEM guys were getting into philosophy 10 years ago just because a lot of the tech people were telling them that in order to do AI, that they needed to know a little bit more about informal logic and reasoning skills because there's a chasm between um, getting to strong AI and being able to replicate a very human form of reasoning, which can't be programmed, which is abductive reasoning. Kind of gets into what we're talking about, though. One of Rene Descartes' doubts was that we could actually give a naturalistic explanation of rationality. He thought that yes, you could program it, you could program like uh, you could program rationality into a machine. Like he even back then he realized that, but he didn't think that there was a naturalistic explanation of rationality, and that therefore it must be something of a different substance than some of our physical properties. He didn't think that rationality could be a physical property, and now through cognitive science, we have given ways to show that rationality is a physical property. Actually, that is one of the two main uh, mental properties uh, of the mind brain. One being rationality, and the other is intentionality. To talk about intentionality would be a different topic though, because then we have to get into the philosopher Franz Brentano and the Franz Brentano's thesis on intentionality and his query on how you could give a naturalistic explanation of intentionality, which is exactly what we do in cognitive science and philosophy of mind. Um, Asia says, "Howdy, yo." What's up, Asia? You always pop in. Donnie Stuff says, "What?" He said, "The only real cow in here is you, Nightmare," whatever that means. Dell says, "What's up? What's up, Dell?" Control Delete says, "That's false. Wasn't one of the royals." Yes, it was. I literally just, he was, his research was supported by the Dutch royal family at the time. He ended up dying prematurely in his, I'm going to say his late 50s, late 50s, early 60s. Because I think he caught a flu or something like that, and I think he got sick working with doing the stuff with his optics. He got himself pretty sick from doing optics and stuff like that. His optic research. Control Delete says he worked for the French under Cecil. Mm. The faceless dasher says you need face hair looking like boys don't cry. Nah, see, when you have a strong chin because you work out, you don't need to cover it with pussy hair all over your face like your bitch ass does. Moving on. Control Delete says he's never fought in war. Another false claim. Dude, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Moving on. I mean, he literally served in the army of the Catholic Duke Maximilian of Bavaria, and he held military service. There's always been a connection between the intellect and the physical. So much so that in Plato's Academy, the first university ever to exist in the world, at Plato's Academy, um, gymnastics was a part of their curriculum. There was gymnastics, geometry, um, ethics, metaphysics, all that sort of stuff. Like this was all part of the academy. You were expected to be, especially this is coming out of a Hellenistic Greek culture. Hellenistic culture prided themselves on athletic excellence. This is why the Olympics were so important to the ancient Greece, to the ancient Greeks. To be athletic was a was a form of social prestige. And yes, he served the Dutch state army. He spent a lot of his life working in the Dutch Republic, and he was a Catholic. Although he served maybe for a Protestant state, and some people who read his writings consider him more of a deist. A deist is someone who believes in God but doesn't believe that God is manifest in the world, sort of like a clockmaker who creates his watch or clock and then lets it run on its own without interference. Um, but more or less, he was a Roman Catholic, and you see it in some of his writings where he separates the different substances of existence, um, the matter, the mind, and God. Like these are three separate substances. So Dale says, I thought Socrates went to Africa to study and avoid conflict. No, I think you're thinking of Aristotle, and that's not exactly what happened. So Aristotle, like Socrates, who taught Plato, and Plato, who then taught Aristotle, was like Socrates. His mentor's mentor was accused of um, basically teaching teaching the children of Athens things that were against the state. And Aristotle was like, no, you will not twice offend philosophy. I'm out. So whereas Socrates deemed he would stay in Athens till the day he died, and that if he was punished for doing so, so be it. Aristotle said, nah, fuck that. I'm gone. And he bounced and he went to Egypt. I believe he later became a teacher of Alexander the Great. But that wasn't Socrates. Socrates never really left Athens other than when he was in the wars, like the Peloponnesian Wars and stuff like that. He was a war hero, but outside of outside of the wars he fought against Sparta, he never left Athens. Yeah, so you're confusing him with Aristotle, I believe. Aristotle fled Athens and I think ended up in Egypt. Nostalgic says, how do you cope with living alone with no partner or family? Drop it in the super chat because I'm not here to give people any sort of psychological coping mechanism right now. We're talking strictly nerdy stuff, and that's where I'm going to stay. I, King Reza says, I'm Irani. I realized that from what you said, but I'll tell you right now, if you post any more stuff about bombs and missiles, you will be banned from this channel because I don't put up with that stuff. Zoe Rice says, hi from Northern UK. Why are you live? I like to ask when I'm scrolling. Well, because I'm doing my daily live stream. I'm talking about something nerdy, which is how do you know that you exist? How do you know that you, yes, you, and all the rest of you, how do you know that you guys exist? Nostalgic says, do you like Star Trek? Of course. I'm a nerd. But I think every nerd should like Star Trek. I'm joking, but yes, I like it. I'm. But if you're gonna ask me any other random questions, drop it in the super chat. Mastio says he's just very behind in reading them. Yeah, that's why I'm skipping a lot of them because if you're asking me irrelevant questions, I'm gonna skip them to get to the more important stuff, the meat and bones. And by the way, what's up, Miss Needle? Actually, when you get a chance, I want to see if you can help me out with a video. Zoe says not the Zionists in the comments. Okay. Yeah, we're not talking about that stuff, guys. Zoe says also AI is just a tech industry scam. It's not intelligent. It's just regular scraping of other people's content. How do you know, Zoe, that you're not just AI? How do you know you weren't just programmed to think those thoughts that you just had right now that are actually coming from someone else? Justo says you exist because you exist in other people's minds, I guess. If people are aware of our existence as well, that means we do exist. Not necessarily. So we have in minds all sorts of fictional things, right? For me, like Batman and characters from Star Wars, and a lot of us may all share these ideas about Batman and Star Wars and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and but they're not real. So the fact the fact that we can hold these ideas in our head doesn't make the content of those ideas real. So what we refer to, how we refer to ideas and other similar mental phenomena nowadays, juiced dope is what we call mental representations. In the the ancients and the modern philosophers, they used to refer to all these things as ideas and stuff like that. So we're a little bit more clear about it now. But we refer to those things as mental representations. Mental representations, instead of giving you the the, the one page definition of it that I had to do in a graduate class on just on mental representations, I'm just put it simply as this: mental representations are um, they are, I'll put it this way, they are symbols that are manipulated by our minds for the purposes of knowledge, and these symbols carry information which is then manipulated by by our minds to so that we can have representations or ideas about the external world and about us internally as well. So the fact that we have mental representations of stuff by themselves doesn't make those things real, even if we all share them. As a matter of fact, there's actual psychological disorders where people can share the exact same delusions at the same time, but it doesn't make it real. It goes by different names, but the old form, the old name of it used to be called mass hysteria, but it's still an actual, like, legit psychological phenomena. Um, Arthur Blumpkin says, when I was 16, my cousin Helen got a seafood pizza from Red Lobster. Ill. Already, seafood pizza is already disgusting to me, but let's continue. It gave her food poisoning and she almost died. Helen Blumpkin. They got rid of the seafood pizza shortly after. Yes, I never knew the Red Lobster had a seafood pizza, but I wouldn't be surprised because seafood pizza was like sort of trendy, like in like I'm guessing like the late '80s, early '90s. That was a trendy thing. My father loved it, and I thought it was completely disgusting. Like we used to go to Virginia Beach every summer, and he would always buy that, and my sisters and I would be like, no." We would get our own pizza with like pepperoni and sausage. Like we weren't rocking with the seafood pizza. Good thing we didn't, because like you saying, like not everyone exercised good cooking protocol when it came to that seafood. So, but that's completely irrelevant. I just wanted to read that because it sounded interesting. Fifth month says peace and blessings from Texas. Thank you, fifth month. Desmond Cassidy says that's not really prematurely depending on the century he was born in. I have no idea what that even what you're saying. Fifth month says studying. Mm. Spar says, why do you look black and Indian at the same time? What do you consider black? What do you consider Indian? You realize that both people of the black diaspora, black African diaspora, and people of the Desi Indian diaspora have a range of different skin tones and facial and phenotypic feature, phenotypic phenotypic features that they can display. People from North India all the way to South India have a bunch of different looks. And then you go east, and many of them look East Asian. So the Desi diaspora, the Black diaspora, quite quite genetically diverse, and those genotypes can be displayed in many different phenotypic features. So maybe you don't haven't been around many people around your life. You need to travel. You should travel more. Agnes says, good night, sir. Just getting home. I never catch you in the chat, Agatha. But but this is funny. Walmart. He said this live stream was brought to you by Walmart. Save money, live better. Nah, if this stream was brought to you by Walmart, I would be getting paid. I don't have a. I'm not connected with any particular brand. When I'm connected to a brand, you guys will know because you will see it in the videos. Aziz says, "How do you define real?" So I, I actually, you must have just came into the stream because I said we're going to give a working definition of reality for this stream so that we aren't jumping all over the place, Aziz. So I said for the purposes of this stream, we're going to define reality as the way things actually are. That's what we're going to do. So that can keep us from talking about alternate realities, different modes of existence, different dimensions, which people use the word dimension wrong all the time. Dimension is as it's used in math and physics, is is more or less talking about different physical values that can be quantified. That's what a dimension is when it comes to math and physics. But people use the term incorrectly all the time because they watch too much sci fi. But for the purposes, again, of this conversation in this live stream, we're going to define reality simply as the way things actually are. That keeps things simple, and we can work it. When we can work from there. Agnes says, "How do I get you in the chat?" What do you mean? How do you get me? You mean how do I get you? Do you have a YouTube channel? Is that what you're asking? To get me in your live chat? I'll be more than happy to come into your chat sometime. I don't know if that's what you're asking me though. Aziz says the pizza shop here has seafood pizza. Yeah, I mean, I would trust it from a pizza place. I would, let's put it this way. I don't eat seafood pizza, but if I did, I would trust seafood pizza coming from a pizzeria than coming from a seafood restaurant. I don't trust non-seafood food coming from a seafood restaurant. Like that's why I wouldn't go to a seafood restaurant and order fried chicken because I'm scared that they're probably gonna fry their chicken in the same seafood grease and have my chicken coming out smelling fishy. and when it comes to and when it comes to pizza, that they might contaminate the pizza with 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 seafood that hasn't been fully cooked that gets onto the dough and the cheese or whatever. So I would trust the seafood pizza coming from a pizzeria than trust the seafood pizza coming from a seafood restaurant. But that's just my bias because I'm not into seafood. But let's get back to the subject. So what are you asking me, Agli? You said how do I get when you said how do I get you in the chat? What were you asking? Are you asking how can you get? I'm not sure if you're asking me how can you get a question to me, or if you're asking me how can I get into your chat on your channel or something. That's why I'm not sure what you meant. Pork chop blacks and seafood pizza is good here. Do you have a restaurant, Pork Chop Black? If so, shout out your restaurant. Um, Saeed says seafood boot, perfectly cooked, having new age parasites in it. I don't know what that means. Aziz says, I see. Oh, she said yes. A question. Yeah, ask me a question, Agatha. You've been here so long. You know you can ask me a question. You you know you've been rocking with me in my streams for a long time. You know you can ask me any question. Look, when it comes to my regulars like you, Agatha, or like Miss Needle or Moonlit Fern or anyone else, if you guys want to ask me a random question, you know I'm gonna answer. It's just for the people who come in here asking random stuff trying to troll. Because I know you're being I know if you ask me a question that you're being sincere, so I don't mind. It's for the people I don't know yet that I don't want them derailing the topic because I know they're just here just to have throw off their little random ideas. So um, this is actually good advice from Opor. He says, please remember to take rest while streaming and drink lots of water. Drink water, train to kill, drill sergeant. Huh. It's like, nah, I have my water right here. And got some iced coffee right here. And Kevin Samuels on the YouTube. The late great Kevin Samuels. I wish the guy was still alive to comment on some of the stuff that's come about in the last 2 years. I would like to hear his views on it. But anyway, Pork Chop says, "Nah, I'm saying I'm." Oh, he said I'm staying in New Orleans. So I said New Orleans. I say New Orleans. I said New Orleans. I said we have about 8 pizzerias have seafood pizza that's really good. Yeah, so I'm not doubting the seafood pizza isn't good, Pork Chop Black. What I'm saying is I just don't like seafood at all, so I wouldn't want a seafood pizza. That's what I was saying. But and you're also backing up what I'm saying as well when you said the seafood pizza from the pizzerias are pretty good, and that's what I would expect. Like I said, if it's coming from a pizzeria, it's probably gonna be good. But if it's coming from a seafood restaurant, I don't think it's gonna be good because what seafood restaurant has like a good oven for baking pizza pies. That's what I was saying. Like I was saying, I was dubious that a seafood restaurant would make good seafood pizza, but I do think a pizzeria, like a traditional pizzeria, would make good seafood pizza, because because seafood pizza, like they eat that in Italy. Excuse me, in Italy too. They definitely eat seafood pizza in Italy. Italy is on my wish list too. I gotta take the wifey there. I'm sure she would love to go there. And they have a big Filipino community in Italy. If you didn't know that, Mrs. Contrarian. Z says he just doesn't like seafood. Yeah, that's pretty much it. But I do believe there is good seafood pizza out there. I just don't want it. And I'm thinking the best seafood pizza comes from a pizzeria. Um, but the other guy, how that original tangent conversation came about was he was saying Red Lobster once used to serve until people got sick, and then they stopped. They took it off their menu, and I was like, yeah, because Red Lobster is kind of whack. So he says, I'm afraid of seafood. Well, if you're halal, say, you can't eat that much seafood anyway. I'm assuming, I could be wrong, that you're Muslim. So yes, halal does allow, um, no pun intended right there, but yeah, halal does, um, have, um, let people eat, some shellfish, whereas kosher doesn't. That's the difference. I think that's like the main difference between halal and kosher, is that halal does allow people to eat shellfish, some shellfish. Aziz says, "Do you think we will have immortality in the future?" Uh, I can't really speculate on that, but it also depends on what you mean by immortality. Do you mean like true immortal? Like, it depends on what you mean by immortality. Do you mean, because you can look at immortality in a bunch of different ways. There's immortality in the sense that you can't die from, where we can just not die from aging and disease, and that is a genuine possibility because now the the medical science now tackles aging as a form of disease. So if you can treat or cure aging, that can kind of make you timeless. As far as, and then there's been research showing that our bodies can actually live a very long time. Like, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of years. Like, so there's a sort of like long term life that can be roughly seen as immortality, akin to like Wolverine. Like, Wolverine isn't actually immortal, but he can live so long that's like practically immortal. There's that sense, because he won't die from aging or disease, but you can still be killed. You can some I don't want to use that word on YouTube. You can still have your life ended by someone else or yourself, right? So there's that form of immortality. So again, you have immortality in the sense that you can just live for like maybe hundreds to several hundreds, thousands of years, sort of immortality, which is a very, not really immortality, but more of a long, a very long existence. Then there's the sense of immortality that the only way you would die is through like someone deleting you or you deleting yourself. And then there's like total immortality, where you're not where you not only are impervious to aging and disease, but you can't you're um you're unkillable. And that, to be honest, I wouldn't want that. That would be a curse. That sense of immortality would be a curse. Then you got to assume, well, would your body still maintain its physique throughout this period, or would you just become completely completely useless as you stay mentally sharp and stuff, but your body just completely atrophies? Like any way you look at it, other than like extending everyone's lives longer than what they currently are, would be a curse. Can we have so the most extreme form, the total immortality, I don't think is while it's while it's conceivable, I don't think is a genuine possibility. Um, Whereas having a body that would be impervious to aging and disease, that is a genuine possibility. But would it be like how likely would that be? I can't say. But the other form where we could just live for a long time, that's a genuine possibility and is physically possible. Looking at the way medical research is going today, and this fits into like sort of the discussion. Would How will we know this was our that life is a real one? How do we know that's not just a computer simulation? How we know that we're not just a brain in a vat? The classic skeptical hypothesis based on the Cartesian idea of us being deceived by someone else who is of a higher intelligence than us, leading us to believe in some hallucination or delusion about our lives. The Matrix, the Matrix comes from this idea. Um, so he says, bro, you got a topic to talk on immortality. I'm not really dwelling on the immortality. That's why I try to fold it back into the original conversation, which is, how do you know you're real? And it fits the whole immortality idea. If you could live to be, if you could be immortal, how do you know that's a, how do you know that's a genuine existence? How do you know you're just not a program that's just kept running or simulation? Um, and I don't want to get into it too much, but some people might be aware of the simulation hypothesis that in certain areas of theoretical physics that describe the whole universe as a holograph, that everything we're experiencing, all of the observable universe is actually just a holograph of something beyond our cosmos, that or that we are all reflections of. The problem with the holographic principle in theoretical physics is sort of the same problem with the brain in the vat hypothesis or the Cartesian demon. We have no reason, although we can't explain it away, we have no reason to seriously accept the hypothesis more than our everyday common sense uh, things that we encounter every day. Aziz says biological immortality. So all of them were referring to biological immortality, but again, you can think of it in three different ways: a super long life, or being impervious to any aging and disease whatsoever, or complete immortality, like that of the Greek gods. The Greek gods were completely immortal; they couldn't be destroyed, and like even if you ate them or ripped them apart or whatever, they were still alive in some sense. Like the you couldn't destroy the Olympian gods, nor their nor their forerunners, the Titans, and nor their forerunners, the primordial deities. Like they were all truly immortal. But to me, that's a curse that you could get eaten and still be alive. But we'll have to get into all of that. But Oh, he said, yeah, but not, he means in the sense of not dying from aging and disease. Okay, gotcha. As he says, that's a good approach, I think, referring to I think, description of how we can keep reality and the working hypothesis of reality here is just the way things actually are. mm. As he says, I think it would be interesting to live a few thousand years. Right. But like again, to fold it back into the original topic, how do you know that's actually you? So when it comes to immortality, how do you know that's really you living? How do you know that's really you? How do you know that you didn't stop? How do you know you didn't die a few thousand years ago and that there's a clone of you that's going about with your same thoughts, your same memories, your same personality, um, your or your psychological connectedness, personality, beliefs, memories, quasi memories, thoughts, desires, um, all these things are in a clone of you, completely like the original version of you, and that you died a few thousand years ago, but a clone of you is going on as you. And as far as you're concerned, as you being a clone, you've been continuing living for all this time. How do you know you're not that clone? How do you know we're not actually going through that right now? That as we age every year, we assume this is actually us. How do we know that our, our bodies every night aren't just slothed off somewhere and just a new version of a new version of us props up the next day? How do you know? Gold Rush. Oh, you was talking about the peanuts. No, I had the peanuts because I get muscle cramps. That's why I had them. Sometimes I had, and I know this is gonna sound goofy too, pickles, like because I drink the pickle juice. It's to it's to ward off muscle cramps. That's why I have those beside me, and they're tasty. But yes, I have peanuts because I stave off muscle cramps because I get frequent muscle cramps on Charlie horses. Aziz says unkillable like vampires. LOL. He said no one would want that. You'd be surprised. Some people would. You ever see the classic movie with Bruce Willis called Death Becomes Her? Some people would want that, especially as people get older. They would cling to anything that would extend their lives out of desperation. Especially in case you are put in a container and sink at the bottom of the ocean. Mm. Have you read what is that DC Comics? The Sandman. If you haven't read the Sandman, you could watch the show on Netflix. And there's a guy that the Sandman blesses, whom he thought cursed. He initially thought he was cursing a man with immortality, but the guy ended up seeing it as a blessing. So he ended up becoming the Sandman's friend because they were, meet each other every, I don't think every year, like every 10, 50 years, 100 years, something like every, no, I think he would greet him every century and he would tell him, about how his life has been going. Because he thought eventually the guy would ask for his life to be taken from him. And he was wrong. The guy, through all his trials and tribulations, enjoyed the fact that he could keep reinventing himself. One of the things that he had, remarked how sometimes he's been like, uh, people have tried to end his life and keep him like in crazy situations, like at the bottom of, like stuck in the bottom of a ship or something. Like, but anyway, I want to get back on topic. Saeed says jellyfish can live but can be killed just like that. Yeah, so I mean, bacteria are not programmed to die. Like their bacterial cells aren't programmed to die like our our body cells are. They don't have a programmed death like our body cells do, which have a certain time period in which they kick off. They can just endlessly multiply. Aziz says some whales and sharks can live about 500 years. I'm not aware of that, but that might be true. Aziz says like a simulation. Yep. Hawk says hi. What's up? All right, I'm gonna get off this immortality because you guys want to talk about. I'm not talking about immortality. I'm talking about the question of how do you know that you exist. I don't want to keep talking about immortality. You're not going to change the topic just because that's something you find more interesting. If that's something you find more interesting, we can do that another day. My topic is what it is. So with that, I'm gonna get to Agatha because it's been Agatha all along. So Agatha says, "What's your opinion on the vaccine? I have taken two plus a booster, and all of a sudden, uh, I start feeling not myself, plus headaches and missed periods every 3 months, feeling scared." When was the last time you took a booster? So if you talk, I'm guessing you're talking about the COVID-19 vaccine. I've taken it too, and I've taken two boosters with it, but I haven't taken any of the recent ones in the last year or two. Um, I didn't notice any effects from it other than like sort of like some minor aches and pains from it, which you normally get from like taking like a flu vaccine. Other than just like the minor effects of taking a flu vaccine, I didn't have any like any effects from it. If you think that you are having some effects from it, I would say go to your doctor and see if that's actually the case, because what might be the thing is you might be having some sort of ills and pains, but it may not have anything to do with the vaccine. It may be something else all completely different from it. So I would say go to your primary care physician and actually tell them what's going on, and that way they can suss out whether it's actually the vaccine that's affecting you or if it's something else, like maybe you're suffering dysmenorrhea or something like that. um, I don't know and I don't know if you've suffered dysmenorrhea before. um, but if you have, then maybe this is what's happening again. Or if you never had it before, maybe you're starting, this is something you may start experiencing through stress or other unrelated things to COVID booster shots. But I would say I would say um, just go to your doctor and tell them what's going on and see if they can get to the root cause of it. Because I don't want to just speculate on your medical health here. Because I'm not qualified to give diagnoses nor a prognosis of that diagnosis. So yeah, go get that checked out, Agatha, and then let me know. Let us let us know what happened with that. So are you saying just go? No, Saeed. She doesn't just go to the gym. She needs to get checked out medically. You don't go to the gym if you're having problems with your period. This shows you haven't. This shows you know nothing about female female bodies. Go Agatha, go see a doctor and see what's up. They'll be able to let you know if this has anything to do with your vaccine booster, or whether you're suffering something you know pertaining to your feminine health or something else altogether, or if it's just a coincidence. So, but the only way you'll know is by going to see a primary care doctor. Go do that, and they're probably gonna set you up with a referral to like an OBGYN or something like that. Peanuts help cramps. No, muscle cramps. Not when I said peanuts help cramps, I said muscle cramps. I'm not talking about female cramps, Aziz. Some of you guys do not know female health at all. That's scary. If you plan on having wives in the future. No, I'm talking about because of the saltiness of the peanuts, it helps with muscle cramps because it's usually it's usually as a resulting of me depleting my electrolytes. The most heavily depleted electrolyte is typically sodium, which you can easily replenish from salty foods. Also, bananas because they also replace potassium, which is another important electrolyte. Um, Kayla, what's up, Kayla? She says, "Hey everyone, how's everyone doing today? What's going on, Kayla? Been watching any more Rule 34? Rule of 34, whatever it was called. I know something 34. Um, Agnes says last year was fine. All of a sudden, yeah, I like again, aggravate. I'm not gonna armchair diagnose you because I'm not. I'm just not qualified. So again, if it's excuse me, if it's causing you menstrual problems, go see a doctor immediately to make sure it's not something else. Like we want to make sure it's not something else like pelvic inflammatory disease or something like that, or dysmenorrhea, those sorts of things. But you only know if you go get checked out. So go get that checked out. What's up, Officer Lumen? He said, "Hey, what's up? Just wanted to say hi and see what's up. What's going on, Officer Lumen? See, see, he's back." Agnes says, "Okay, thanks. We'll call my doctor." Good, yeah, do that. Dot own says the drink water guy. I'm trying not to laugh right now. I'm seeing Kevin Samuel just completely own this chick. She's like bald headed, and she was talking trash on this live. Well, this live he did like two over 2 years ago. He start he start calling her. He's trying to say she looks like uh what's the guy named what's the rapper from Murder Inc. Damn, I can't remember his name. The 1 to 50 clown. He's calling her Charlie Baltimore too. This is just hilarious. Like he is just roasting the shit out of her. I miss this dude. I miss this dude so much. If he was still doing his content today, man, it'd have been off the chains. To see like um that one chick he had on the show, Melissa or whatever the chick name is, now that she's claimed to be Muslim and covering herself, that's hilarious. Seeing her money dry up because she's trying to cover herself and be a good Muslim woman. Oh, it's hilarious. But anyway, Aziz says, I agree, a form of us exists even if we are a simulation or an object in a simulation. Well, no, if you're a simulation, you don't actually exist. That's the problem with the simulation hypothesis. But again, the simulation hypothesis and the holographic principle even though these are 21st century ideas, they stem from stuff stemmed all the way back to Descartes, which is the whole being deceived by evil demon hypothesis. You can you can wrap that idea up in different ways. You can go from evil demon to brain in a vat, or being tricked by evil scientists, or we're just a computer simulation, or we're just images of a holographic universe being projected onto the cosmos. I don't care how you spin it, they all face the same epistemic problems. And I'm kind of giving you guys the I'm giving you guys the solution here. But anyway, I don't care. I'm giving you guys the solution for free. I'm giving away so much information for free. It's ridiculous. But anyway, the problem all these ideas suffer from is you can't it get the ideas that we don't actually exist need a special explanation, because what that sort of skeptical idea that we we don't know that we don't actually exist, or we can't know that we actually exist, has no firmer epistemic footing than the ideas that we do actually exist. In order to accept that we don't actually exist, we need a special explanation of why that set of beliefs is has a special status, epistemically speaking, than our common sense ideas that we do exist. So I just gave you guys I just gave away the whole thing right there, but that depends on who's actually listening right now. Miss Tiara says hello. What's up, Miss Tiara? As he says, if you have a problem with electrolytes, you can drink coconut water is a good electrolyte. First of all, coconut water is disgusting, so I'm not drinking that. Two, it's not. I'm not going all the way to the little Jamaican joint up the street or to the supermarket to buy a bunch of coconut water. That's just no. I can just use Gatorade and pickle juice, or at a clutch mustard. Mustard works too. But I'm not buying a whole bunch of imported coconut water. Plus, I don't like the taste of coconut water. It's disgusting to me. I don't like anything coconut flavored. If you have cramps when you're waking up, Aziz, you probably need to be stretching and exercising. Kayla says, have you heard about the new SpongeBob Wendy's thing that some comes out on October 8th? Yeah, I just mentioned this. Actually, I just mentioned this in my live stream yesterday, Kayla. That they that Wendy's was doing the Krabby Patty meal from SpongeBob. I'm actually gonna go get it. I don't even like Wendy's like that, but I'm thinking I'm gonna go get the Krabby Patty. I don't even like the SpongeBob TV show. Um, Matter of fact, I remember like that show is old. I know it's old because even when I was in college, it was still old. And this was like 22 years ago. We were taking a final exam in my uh, class on human decision making and problem solving class, but it was in a new state of the art uh, lecture hall that we had, which was like the lecture hall was fully automated. So every seat came with a built-in computer into it. So we could react with what the professor was doing from his screen to ours, back and forth. And he, because he's a cognitive scientist, psychology professors have a nasty habit of seeing their students as subjects, and he decided to do just that. Treat us as subjects. It's a freaking it's a freaking final exam, right? And he plays SpongeBob SquarePants loudly while we're taking a final exam to see how we react to the stress of SpongeBob SquarePants while taking the test. Now, first of all, I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't adequately prepared for that final as I should have. But that just made it worse that he played SpongeBob because I didn't like the show. I thought SpongeBob was an idiot and I didn't understand why kids liked the show. I thought his voice was annoying. I thought the show was stupid. So that just aggravated me more. However, I do know that I'm guessing from the testing he did on us and looking at our resulting grades that he gave us, I think, a generous curve for the final because otherwise that would have been completely wrong of him to like not have some sort of grade adjustment based on the fact that he decided to just randomly play SpongeBob SquarePants loudly on the main screen panel for the whole lecture hall while we're taking a final exam. That was bananas. But yeah, but I think I will try the Wendy's Krabby Patty meal this maybe this weekend or next week. Mikhail says, and it's called Rule 34, just so you remember. Okay. I'm probably not gonna watch it. I'm kind of like phasing out of porn now, and I'm kind of into my Andrew Tate thing where I think porn and masturbation is a waste of a man's time. So we'll see. And like I said, when I did check it out, Kayla, it looked like it was just animated stuff. So I don't know, even know if I saw the right thing, but I looked at it and it's like, okay, this looks weird, and I just flipped off and went right back to watching Mad Men. So dot own says, well, how would you operate if you don't exist? Something is operating you or driving you, so you must exist in some form. So that, well, you get into two different things. Now you get into intentionality. That gets into another question. Then dot own, which is a good question, is can an intentional being can can something be intentional without exist? Can you have um can you have intentional non-existence? Like something that has intentionality, meaning it is driven to or about something or aiming at something, but that intentional object itself doesn't doesn't exist. That's that's a different wrinkle to this question. But obviously you can operate as if as if you exist but don't know you exist. That's the whole point of strong AI, is to develop automatons that would operate as if they exist, even though if even though they don't have they don't have their own sentience. But then it gets into a question of then it gets into a question of that there's a gray area between something that has sentience, something that doesn't, and what if, since we're our minds are also computational, um, if it's just a matter of more complex computation to the point where we can say something is rational and intentional and has sentience. Is that just a matter of computational complexity, or is this something more intangible? Now, again, Rene Descartes himself said, yes, you can program machines to have rationality. He didn't doubt that. He knew that even in the 1500s that that was a possibility, that humans could one day design machines that are rational. What he doubted was that that rationality was something that could be a part of the natural world, right? That it would have to be something it would have to be something artificial like a machine, because he thought that rationality came from a utterly different substance of what makes up matter. He thought that the physical and the mental were different spheres of existence. Then he had a third sphere of existence for like God and his, like, angelic beings and stuff like that. But he believed in substance dualism, that that the mind and the matter were two different substances. Um, but if you're saying that if some, but if you what you're saying is if something is intentional, it must exist. I'm not too sure because you can program something to think that it has its own intentional it has its own intentional properties. Um, Officer Loomis says everyone is special, and even if you don't believe it, Owen says the real question of our generation is quote, do humans have free will? Quote, and the answer is surprising. No, that's a different subject. The whole free will, and I've actually addressed that in a different live stream, and I might bring that back again. But the question of free will and existence, we're talking about two different ideas here. The question here is, how do you know you exist? I mean, I see how that can be related to free will, but they're not mutually inclusive. They do. There's an overlapping. There's some overlapping ideas between the idea of human freedom and and um, and existential questions, right? There's if you plotted them on a Venn diagram, there's going to be a part where those two spheres intersect, but they're not mutually inclusive, meaning the two circles don't completely overlap each other. Okay. That one says extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Exactly. That was the famous quote from Carl Sagan. But that's we're not getting into extraordinary claims. We're getting into very matter of the fact type of ideas here. Existence. Again, the these this philosophical question goes all the way back to the times of Plato and probably even before Plato with the pre-Socratic philosophers. But we can at least credit Plato as having first discussed these ideas in a formal manner. Okay. But what we're talking about is how do you know that you exist? This is not an extraordinary claim. It's a question. What part of the problem is the language that we use to ask this question? Because obviously, if we ask a muddled question, we're going to get a muddled answer. That's why I capitalize you while you to say, how do you know that you exist? Because just because here's the thing, even if you can give us reasons, good reasons to think that you exist, it doesn't extrapolate to everyone else. That's another wrinkle. Ping Pong says hi. Dot Owen says I dated a girl nicknamed Coconut. She made great water. Funny. Aziz, I'm not talking about the electrolytes anymore. I get it, but salt. You saying salt alone is not enough as an electrolyte? Yes, it is. The main ingredient in Gatorade is salt. I'm trust me, I'm fine. I don't need any uh, YouTube medicine. Kayla says I like old SpongeBob. New SpongeBob sucks. I don't even know the difference between a new one and the old one. Miss Nia says Aziz, try supplementing magnesium. There's different kinds. Do some research. Right, and people don't also know when it's so Miss Nia when he's saying salt, he doesn't realize that table salt is only one form of salt. He's just thinking of sodium chloride, which is makes up table salt. But there's many different salts. A salt is basically any pairing of a uh, of a base with an acid. The pairing of a base and an acid will give you a salt. It's just that most it's just that most forms of salt found in the world are actually toxic to us. There's only a few types of salts that are actually edible to us, like sodium chloride, basic table salt. But there's many different salts, and sodium is one that often needs to be replenished a, when you are physically active. I don't think he's I'm pretty sure he's not an athlete, so he doesn't understand the dilemma of what an athlete goes through for constant muscle cramping. Like most of you, frankly, probably don't exercise, so you don't understand what it is to deal with uh, a lot of muscle cramping. Because I'm a distance runner. If I'm running between 10 and 13 kilometers every day, I'm going to cramp. On top of doing martial arts, on top of going to the gym, on top of sometimes going to an MMA training. So that says remembering the exact course from 20 years ago is pretty impressive. Thanks. Officer Loomis says my stepson used to watch SpongeBob, and he said it's amazing. I just couldn't get into it. Like it's sometimes funny, but back then I just had no I wasn't really into like that sort of stuff anymore, so I couldn't really watch it. He said, but he was like 9, so that yeah, exactly. He said now he's 12, still watching SpongeBob. No problem. Like I'm, he's gonna always have. If he watched it at 9, he's always gonna have a nostalgia for SpongeBob. The stuff that I watch at 9, I still have a nostalgia for. Transformers and He-Man. I mean, like no, He-Man was already done. But Transformers and GI Joe, and Thundercats and Silverhawks. I was watching that around 9, so still some of my favorite stuff, cartoons that I'll catch sometimes on YouTube. And now they're on Tubi. You can watch all these seasons on Tubi as well. That owns says now it feels like we're getting down to the argument what is existence. No, so I'm not trying to delve into what is existence. That's a completely different question. That to ask what is existence is going to get is a question that's going to lead us completely astray. I don't want to go astray. Again, the question is how do you know that you exist? We're going to leave, like I said, and like I said, for the sake of the conversation, we're gonna have a working definition of reality here. This states that reality is the way things actually are, and we're gonna assume also. I should have made this clear as well, but I that's my fault for not making this clear. But we're gonna work under the assumption that that we know the existence is something that something that representing reality, right? Again, that's why we can talk about things like being deceived or delusions or hallucinations because we're going to assume that things that are a matter of hallucinations or illusions or deceptions are not real, do not, or ergo, do not exist. But we're not going to get into the higher metaphysical question of what is existence because that's a completely separate question. And it's actually not necessary to go into that question to answer the other question. Officer Loomis says not surprised because he spent $600 from the credit card on SpongeBob plushies. He said, Officer Loomis says I almost cried when the bank notified me. How did he have access to your card? Ain't no way, man. I'm like, nah. as easy as to be part of the natural world, even those machines will need to go through an evolutionary process. Machines don't go through an evolutionary process because they're not. It's not naturalistic. It's art. Art. That's an art. So in evolution, you have natural selection. You have random genetic drift. Those are the two major processes of evolution. But you also have things like artificial selection, which is things things that um, progress through human design. That's not natural evolution. There's also things like sexual selection, which is a byproduct of either natural selection or artificial selection. But again, we don't have to go into all of that. Point is, like, the as machines develop and become more specialized and more high speed, this is not natural evolution. This is artificial selection through human tinkering. Kayla says, "What, $600?" Uh-oh, got Kayla's interest sparked up. Kayla says $600 on SpongeBob plushie is crazy. Also, Luna says that's just the beginning. Kayla said, "Wait, the beginning?" I know, right? Arthur Loomis has the big money bucks, Kayla. That Owen says, "Okay, I understand what you're saying. That would actually line up with my argument that free will doesn't entirely exist." Oh, well, actually, so if you actually are more interested in that after this stream, go to my live stream where I actually talk about free will. But yes, I make the claim that we have no reason to believe that there is a free will because one, no one can even agree on what it actually is, and two, even if we did, it adds no it adds no it doesn't add to a scientific explanation of human behavior and the mind. It so that's why if I find the whole notion of free will or human freedom to be quite dubious. But that doesn't really, again, that's not really necessary to this conversation, which is how do you know that you are real? Whether you are real or not is actually independent of the question of whether you have free will or not. You may not have free will, but you still may fully exist, which is sort of my my beliefs, right? However, however, um, if you do have free will, does that mean you exist? I'm not sure because again, we don't actually have any sort of working definition of free will because this has been something discussed for over 2,000 years, over 2,000 years. So, careless is what could be worse. Well, also this as well. In total, he spent $5,000 in a year from my credit card. How did you let him have access for that long, though? That's crazy. Kayla says, "What the hell?" I know, right? That's wow. um, that's as if we're programmed, we don't have free will. Mm, programmed by whom? Depending on the program, could the programming not be designed with free will? and again, it kind of gets into what you consider free will. Are you consider any? Are you just if your notion of free will is just the freedom to make choices, then you can program that. If your idea of free will is is chaos, that's well, that's not very helpful because that could be just something poorly designed. Um, I you know, I don't know, but again, the idea of free will and how you know that you exist are two different questions. Those are two separate questions. Um, Aziz is thanking Miss Needle for her advice on the magnesium supplementation. Kayla says, "Are you poor now after that or no?" Because I hope not. She's addressing Officer Lumen. Nah, I'm telling you, Kaylee, the Officer Lumen has the big money bucks. Dot says, "You said we could be a programmed being that believes we are real, which implies we don't have free will. Everything is designed and we're nothing more than puppets." Because you keep trying to tie free will into knowing you exist. Those are two separate questions. I don't know, but you keep want to confounding them. This You're gonna confuse yourself because you're trying to mix two different ideas together. We have to tease apart these things and talk about them separately. Because if you try to put these two things into one discussion, it's just gonna cause confusion. So um, Kayla says because that is crazy for a kid to spend that much. I know. Officer Lumen said he spent any if he spent any more, he spent any more. Honey, this is just scratch. Way more. She said, wait, for real? I think you shouldn't trust him with money. Right. Like, how are you giving him access to your credit card? Aziz says, our sentences reach you with a long latency. That's why it seems unrelated. That's why I'm skipping through certain comments to get to the the media replies and comments. But again, most of it isn't relevant to the actual topic. You guys are talking about the topic I brought up about my muscle cramping because someone tried to make a joke about the peanuts on my um, shelf. And I was like, yeah, because I suffer from muscle cramps. So if I can eat some of that to stave off like muscle cramps, then yeah. And that became a whole different topic, which I don't want. So Officer Luna says, yeah, the bank was nice to let it slide. She said, wait for real, because I always hear that the bank doesn't care. So Aziz says, how do I know I exist? I experience, interact with my surroundings, even though it's just my perception. That's a sign of some sort of existence. So again, that gets into exactly what I said in the beginning, which was this was the forethought that Descartes had, which is the basis of his foundational epistemology. So foundational epistemology is a type of epistemology. Epistemology is the theory of knowledge, belief, and rationality on which he decided in order to have a foundation for all his knowledge and beliefs, you need some sort of first philosophy. First philosophy means that these are basic prior beliefs that um, on which everything else rests, which on which all your other knowledge claims can be stacked on. These these beliefs themselves are basic and prior to every other beliefs. Basic meaning there's nothing else that comes before them. and they're a priori, meaning you can know them you can know them without without experience. Um, Sometimes just through pure reason. And he thought that the pillar of that would be the idea that you can't doubt your own existence, because in doing so, you're proving that very existence by being that thinking thing that doubts. So that obviously there's flaws to that, right? And yes, and the whole thing of I experience and interact with my surroundings, like I said, Descartes threw that all into question when he said, oh, everything that I experience, everything I interact with, everything that I perceive could just be a matter of hallucinations put upon me by an evil demon to trick me. But he thought as long as he could actually doubt those things as well as his existence within amongst these things, that there still must be some thing that is doing the thinking and doubting, and that therefore he must be that thinking and doubting thing. But again, he was only half right. He was right to say that there is a thinking thing that can do the doubting and thinking about all these other things that he perceives. However, he himself is not necessarily that thinking thing. That's what he got wrong. Aziz is another point in physics, claims that everything material is 99% space. We're not going into that. We don't have to go into all of that. That has nothing to do with existence. Those things still exist physically. You're just talking about different you're just talking about different forms of matter and energy and stuff like that. We're not getting to that idea. That's going to lead us astray. I don't know. Every time we talk about things of a philosophical nature, people want to delve into theoretical physics. And I don't know why, because most people who talk about theoretical physics have no training in theoretical physics. Unless you have a master's degree or higher, you should not be sitting there talking about theoretical physics, because this is not at all part of that conversation. As far as this conversation goes, we could still be just talking about Newtonian mechanics. We don't have to go into the ideas of theoretical physics to discuss ideas on whether you know that you exist or not. That has nothing to do with anything. Theoretical physics is just a non sequitur at this point. Officer Lehman says, well, my bank is very strict. Kayla says, okay. Aziz's famous quote, I think so, therefore I am. Yes, except that pithy quote is not anything he actually said. That's just something pithy for people to remember so they could put it on a t-shirt and think they know something about philosophy. Just like the famous Socrates quote that all I know is that I know nothing. um, Again, pithy quote, but incorrect. Officer Lehman says the main part is that he's still alive. I know that's right. I know, I know that's right, Lumen, because, yeah, that's crazy. Oh, by the way, shout out to your son who he sent me a reply on one of my previous videos. He was very nice. He was just like, "Hey, what's up? My father talked about your videos and stuff." So I thanked him for reaching out. Kayla says, "Lumen, I think your son needs a punishment for what he did." Kayla, I think he got punishment. If you read into what Officer Lemon said he should be happy that he's alive. So I think he got punished. I'm I'm reading through that to say that yes, he probably got punished for that. Officer Lemon says, "I wish, but they just be on standby waiting for one wrong move." Right. Dot dot says, "Well, we can't prove that we're not in a simulation. You know what's a good conspiracy? A conspiracy that can't be proven true or false." So here's okay. That may be true. Dot dot. But here's here's the issue with that, right? So the most basic principle of logic is the principle of bivalence, which states, and I'm paraphrasing, that um, for any assertion, that assertion can only be of two, of two truth values, either true or false, right? So, being that that's one of the most basic principles of logic, particularly of, classical bivalent logic or first order logic, but it also holds for second order logic too. But I don't need to extrapolate to why that is the case. But anyway, being that's the most basic principle of logic, you can say, okay, well, these are neither true nor false, right? But it's still the case that it's not true. So therefore, it's just false. If something is neither true nor false, then it's still just false because there's only one way for something to be true, right? Like it's either true or it's not true. So when you get into multi-valued logic systems under second order logic, you might have, like, for instance, one sort of second order logic is called fuzzy logic, where you have true, partially true, somewhat true, almost true, um, partly false, somewhat false, almost false, whatever. That's fuzzy logic. But all those things would simply still be cleaved into two different things. Everything that's true and everything that's not true. So everything that's not true will fit into the partially true, somewhat true, almost true, false, somewhat false, almost false, partially false. All of that would be here, and everything that's just true is here. So something that's neither true nor false is still it still stands to reason that it's not true. Therefore, it's simply false. And as far as a simulation is, and as far as a simulation is concerned, well, again, the skeptic owes us an explanation, because if he's going to say that everything we think to exist isn't really doesn't really exist, then what gives his beliefs higher epistemic status than our common sense beliefs that everything does exist? We can't, although we, it's very hard to see how we can invalidate his argument. His argument still isn't convincing because he still owes us an explanation of what makes his beliefs have a higher epistemic status than our common sense beliefs. Officer Lehman said I was so mad. I know. Dot says, well, as we learn more, we evolve in ways machine learning does exist, and we can train quote unquote machines and they can learn. As for evolution, they aren't growing legs or wings anytime soon, right? Well, they're not going to, because they're not look, this is why Richard Dawkins wrote the book long time ago, Selfish Genes. Genes are self-replicating, and in doing so, we can kind of say that they have the desire to keep replicating themselves, and that they will build us these complicated machines, which are our bodies and minds, all in the effort so they can keep replicating themselves. Machines have no such drive. Like they're not, machines aren't self-replicating. Unless we get into issues about nano machines in the future and all that sort of stuff, maybe. But aside from that sci-fi sort of situation, machine learning is based on, you know, programming, and AI. Um, any sort of quote unquote desire that they have to keep running and doing certain things would be what they're programmed to do. Of course, then comes the objection from some skeptics to say, well, what if we're just the same thing? Like our our brains are just highly, very high tech, squishy machines that have been programmed to desire to keep existing and so forth and so on. So I don't know. Okay, so I would have been mad too. Officer Lemon says anyone would be mad about $5,000. True. And she said, yep, that's true. He said he was stealing my credit card while I was at work. Oh, okay. Aziz says anything including machines is a product of nature. Uh, them being our creation doesn't make it artificial. Yes, it does. By definition, they being our creations does make it artificial. These our very early micro parts were also made by other microorganisms, and if machines would be like, no, no, that's completely different. It if we design them by by definition, that means they are artificial. We are designing them with the intent for our own purposes. That is artificial design by definition. I think you need to be more precise with your wording, because if we are if we are designing things, creating things, then yes, that is artificial by definition. Computers didn't grow out of the out of the earth, nor carved out of the rock. Like, no, they're artificial. Um, Lima says I keep my debit card on me for lunch and stuff while I leave my credit cards at home. But if you're gonna do that, you should probably like stick them in a freezer in like a Ziploc bag or something, or put them away in a safe. Kayla says, okay, that sounds evil as F, right? Dot says, Just A Contrarian, that's not entirely true. You can look at the data and watch documentaries of tests done on seizure patients that had their neural pathway between left and right side of brain surgically split. That has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. Yes, I know the left and right hemispheres of the brain can be severed, and through that we've learned a lot about the brain, about the ipsilateral control of certain bodily processes, and the contralateral control of certain bodily processes, because some things are processed in the left hemisphere, some things are processed in the right hemisphere for right-handed people. When it gets to left-handed people, it's more complex, but still there are some things that are contralaterally controlled and some things that are ipsilaterally controlled, and we only knew that through neurological patients. But that has nothing to do with how we know we exist. That which is the original question. You keep trying to change this into a question of free will, and again, I'm not talking about that today. That is a different topic. those two questions are independent of each other. Not that they're not interrelated, but those are independent questions. You don't have to, in other words, you don't have to answer one to answer the other. Um, Aziz says us for us they need to be self-sufficient and able to reproduce and meanwhile withstand the test of evolution over a long period. You keep misusing the term evolution, Aziz. Evolution is a naturalistic process. If you're talking about us designing something, you're no longer talking about a naturalistic process. You're talking about an artificial process by the very definition of what artificial is. Evolution refers to naturalistic processes, those of natural selection and random genetic drift, as well as some other types of evolutionary processes. But the two main processes of evolution are natural selection and random genetic drift. Also, I'm going to say he's a brat. Trust me. Plus, he's in his young years. Dot dot says they found out that our that even before we even think of doing something, we can actually act on it. It's a crazy stuff. Um, it's not crazy. It's what it is that our mental processes work faster than we're conscious of those mental processes. That's what I think you're that's what I think you're alluding to. Yes, this is something this was one of Freud's biggest enlightenments was that most of our mental processes are unconscious. That most of most of our mental activity is unconscious mental activity. We're only aware of this after the fact. We may we may often we've decided things unconsciously before we've even acted on it upon it because the the mental activity, this unconscious, works usually in hidden layers of our brain before they reach the centers that make that activity, that mental activity conscious. But again, that's really not relevant to this question. It is interesting, yes. But again, this was one of Freud's biggest insights that most of our mental activity is actually unconscious. And what's both exciting and scary about that is that the things that a lot of our, that means that a lot of our behavior is not something we can be consciously aware of, which may lead to us making bad choices and decisions or or leading into psychological problems later on that we can't have a grasp of because it's underneath our conscious awareness. But this was one of Freud's biggest insights. But yeah, there's we can definitely measure this was great cognitive research, by the way, when they actually, because it basically just said it was basically a big alley oop to Freud to say, yeah, he was right. To say that yeah, we often make decisions without being conscious of them. So Aziz says there are robots which are not programmed and they learn by experience. They are programmed, Aziz. They're programmed to learn. That's what machine learning is. They are programmed to have they're programmed to have certain machine learning through statistical inferences and algorithms. So to say that they're not programmed, they are programmed. They're programmed to learn. That's their programming. That is machine learning. That's what artificial intelligence is about. Programming the machines to learn on their own. Also, and this is about to love them to death. Kayla said, "Yep, that's true. You should still love him, even though he sounds like a demon." He said, "Yeah." Um, Caretaker 07 says hi from Colorado. What's up, Caretaker? Carlton says hi. Officer Loomis says, and after all that, he wants to ask me for a $3,500 dirt bike for Christmas. Don't do it. Don't let them get into that dirt bike culture. I didn't even know they had dirt bike culture in New York like they do here in Baltimore. Don't let them get into that dirt bike culture. It's a downhill from there. Kayla says, is he crazy? Is he on something? Loomis says, nope, it was probably his spoiled mom. He said, I told her to stop spoiling him, but she wouldn't listen. Aziz says, even though it may not be as we think or perceive, we can be in a simulation or something other or some other thing we can't think of. There's something doing all these things. Um, Officer Lima says she even took money from me to pay for his school without asking. Are you still with this woman? Because I thought you were like single like now. That's crazy. As he says, nothing um, would happen if there was nothing. Nothing would happen if there was nothing. We wouldn't be dreaming or hallucinating either. Those are two different things. So first of all, it's still an open question whether something can come from nothing. This has been talked about since the pre-Socratic philosophers. People like Parmenides has talked about that. That that you know either the idea of either that something can come from nothing or that there is nothing because if there's nothing then there has to nothing has to be something, but these are ideas going all the way back to ancient philosophy again that has nothing to do with the actual that is not completely related to the idea of how do we know something exists. We're not questioning the definition of existence. That's getting into the question of what is existence. I don't want to get into that question. That that sort of questioning is just of what is existence. That's more just playing a language game. That's not really getting into something that's useful. It's just that's just playing a language game at that point of what is existence. Officer Loomis says not like I would pay for it, but still. Sweet Star says hello, what's up? Joby says, hey buddy, what's going on, Joby? Gregory says hi. Officer Lemons Officer Lemon says lettuce to buttered wet toast question. But yeah, I'm getting back to the subject, guys. Um, Dunjo says hello. What's up, Dunjo? Officer Lemon says I am single, but I ain't with that old rag. I hear you. I mean, I mean, I don't know. Kayla seems like she's giving you some rhythm. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe she's tired of that Rule 34. I still don't know what that is. I really don't. Like, I actually looked it up on one of those adult platforms. I still don't know what that is. But anyway, so yeah, guys. So um, I'm probably about to go soon. But in the meantime, like I said, we can spend a few more minutes on this. But again, the question is, how do you know that you exist? And I say it gets into the very questions which brought on modern philosophy. Modern philosophy was started by Rene Descartes, and he decided to create a foundational epistemology upon the fact that he thought that a prior basic belief for him would be that he exists, and even if he doubted that he exists, then at least there would be a thinking thing that could doubt his own existence, and he would be that very thinking thing. I don't think that really works out, but the rest of his epistemology didn't really work out either. So there you go. And out of that came the idea of Cartesian skepticism, which is, can we justify having knowledge generally, not just of ourselves, but the bigger question from his Cartesian line of reasoning about his very existence is that how can we justify knowing anything? Suleiman says it's just a platform for gays or down bad people are into their own fantasies. You talking about the Rule 34 thing? Because like I said, when Kayla says she's something she watches, I was like, it doesn't sound like something for straight men. To be honest, I don't know, but the only thing I saw when I went on there, I didn't see anything gay, but I did see like animated stuff. But if it, I, the fact that it has like such a specific title R34, it just sounds like something very pause worthy, right? So I'm probably glad I didn't discover what it was because I probably would have been disgusted by it more than likely. My when I do watch adult content, I don't really get into that kinky LGBTQ HDTV type stuff. I just want to see um, white women and Asian women getting crushed. But anyway, let me let that go. Oh, basically Pornhub 2035. But anyway, so guys, I'm gonna wrap this up in a pretty little bow. And for those who didn't hear me an hour ago, I'm gonna repeat the actual answer to this question. So again, how do we know we exist? So if the skeptic is saying, basically asking us, how do we have knowledge that we exist, or how can we justify the knowledge that we exist? Then at this point, we really can't. To be honest, we really can't justify the the sad answer to it is that we really can't justify knowing that we exist. However, there is a caveat. Although we cannot justify the knowledge that we exist, that doesn't mean we should start questioning our own existence. The reason being is that the claims that we don't know we exist are on the same level with the claims that we know we do exist, meaning they don't have any special epistemic status. Epistemic is just a fancy way of saying um, that we have justified knowledge of it, right? All right, we have no, there's no more justified knowledge to say that we know we that we know that we don't exist than the claims, the common sense claims that we know we do exist. So in order for the skeptic to completely annihilate us and say, well, you can't justify that you know you exist, they need to give us some sort of explanation for that. And so far they haven't been able to do so. So it's quite reasonable to go along with our common sense beliefs about the world, thinking that we therefore do exist and that the people around us exist, and for the most part, the external world exists. Now, one thing we do know through later research is that the world doesn't exist exactly how we perceive it. That is called naive realism. What we know now is that what how we perceive the world is mostly through our mental representations or our ideas about the world. This is called, representative realism or scientific realism. That we that basically the way things are, we aim at through our scientific theories and concepts, which is related to representative realism. That our idea that the way the world exists comes to us through our mental representations about the world. Either way, the skeptic does the skeptic wins at a cost. Like he may have won the he may have won with saying that we can't justify our knowledge that we exist, but he gives us no explanation of why that claim has any higher status to our common sense beliefs. So that's sort of the answer there, more or less. Off limits says depends on what people believe, I guess. Believe in, I guess. True. Vasquez, go suck a dick. Like take your gay ass somewhere else. I don't perform for you. Go to one of those little live streams with one of those tweakers. You must have assumed that I was one of them. I will never perform for you or anyone else. Go suck a dick. A 13-inch prison Rikers Island dick. uh, I know Lumen. He's like these trolls be just coming out of the left wing. I don't know what's up with that either, man. Gemma Harvey says what you're speaking about. My son and I had this conversation. Interesting. They do be down bad, Officer Lumen. I don't know what's going on, man. Like if you got those sort of if you got those sort of kinks, take go watch some porn or something. Um, Gemma says people are so disrespectful. I know. Oh, Gemma, I'm about to end this soon, but if you want to see this from the beginning, soon as I finish this, I upload it. Like I upload all my live streams afterwards. The, the only time I've ever deleted a live stream was that it was copyrighted because of the music I was playing in the background. But other than that, all my live streams are up on here. Officer Mrs. I freaking hate trolls, pro man. I do too. I just because I'm monetized, I just can't roast them as much as I want. Because if I wasn't monetized, I would. You should hear some of my prior live streams before I got monetized. Like I was pretty raw with them. Yeah, I'm getting pretty much trolls anyway, so it's probably a good time to call it a day. Because the trolls come in late at night because they're losers who sleep all day long and get up at night just to get online and troll people because they're a bunch of fucking incels who need to end their lives. Yeah, I said it. Some of you just need to lose end your lives because you're losers. Like I said, trolling men, men trolling people online is feminine behavior. You need to get some masculinity back and you do some push-ups. Get punched in the face. Sakuna says you like a burnt microwave oven, burnt microwave hot pocket. Oh, your mother and mine are stuck in her little burnt microwave hot pocket and cream pied it. How old are you, by the way? JT says love the positivity. Thanks. So yeah, guys. So if you want to see the rest of this conversation, like it got led astray with talking about other things like free will and immortality and muscle cramps, you can check this out from the beginning. But I'm gonna end this here because as it gets later, it's gonna just bring in more trolls because losers like them are on late at night because they have nothing to do during the daytime, so they sleep and they wake up at night where they can be losers. Officer Lima says we're always the best, man. Thank you. And Maya Sam, shut your dumb ass up before someone throws a missile on your stupid ass. You're probably in one of them little backwards camel humping countries anyway. You fucking desert troll. Anywho, I'm out. So okay. By the way, I should kind of leave you guys with some more information. So if you're actually interested more in talking about modern philosophy or the Cartesian idea of foundational epistemology and his whole idea about um, or his whole idea on how he established his his line of reasoning from the thought that he can be a thinking thing that exists. Buy the book, or you can read the book, at the library, get it through Amazon, whatever. It's called Meditations on First Philosophy by Rene Descartes. It's called Meditations on First Philosophy because his meditations are his thoughts, first of all. First philosophy also refers to the idea that philosophy is epistemically prior to every other academic discipline, that prior to math, prior to science, philosophy is the handmaiden of the sciences, and a first and that a first philosophy would be the bedrock upon which all knowledge rests. That idea has kind of been abandoned in contemporary philosophy, but there are some people who still hold on to the idea that there maybe is some sort of first philosophy underwriting all our beliefs of knowledge. But if you guys want to learn more about the things I've been talking about today, again, buy the book or check out the book at the library, Meditations on First Philosophy by Rene Descartes. So I'll leave it there. I don't know why these little camel humpers coming into this discussion like I won't roast the shit out of their little stinky 2-inch dick asses that get blown up by American missiles. Like shut the fuck up. Boomtown 89 says, "What's the best advice you've ever received?" Uh, I don't know. There's been many good advice I've had through the years. One came from a drill sergeant when when I was in the army. I was still in training. After I left basic training, I was in advanced training, and I came from DFAC Chow Hall late and missed the bus to take us to our training center. And I said, "Drill sergeant, what should I do?" He's like, "You better haul ass, private." I ran my ass to the training center and almost beat the fucking bus there. Of course, to be fair, it's because I could cut through places that the that the bus couldn't. But I think it was still pretty whore of me that I actually got to the training facility at the same time the bus got there, even though I came out of Chow Hall late. So I think, just like every time people ask, the Flash asks, what should I do? And they's like, run, Barry, run, whole ass private. That's some good advice. The other thing, advice I remember was coming from my philosophy uh, commencement ceremony. So I missed the original commencement ceremony when I graduated in 2004. So they invited me to come to their commencement ceremony for 2005. So I was like, cool. And the speaker there was a guy who taught at a university, I think in like Colorado, University of Colorado, somewhere like that. And he says, a place with a lot of rednecks or whatever. And he's an old white guy himself, and he was like, you know, as you learn philosophy, he's a lot of us want to try out our abilities to reason. He said one guy did that once. He was at some bar, and some guys were like teasing him or whatever, and he started questioning their reasoning and stuff like that, thinking like he's showing how superior he is, and they kicked his ass. And he's like, one of the things you should learn once you start doing philosophy and stuff like that is you should know when you can reason with people and when you can't. um, don't try to reason with unreasonable people. I think that's also very good advice. Don't try to reason with unreasonable people. And the last bit of really good advice came from when I was in high school, my senior year. My French 5 teacher, he was a British guy who married a French woman then moved to America. And he said, if you remember nothing else from this class, and I really don't, to be honest, but he said, if you don't remember anything else from this class, he said, remember this: do not get married unless you are willing to cross the seas to be with that person. And I think that's really good advice. And that's how I know that my wife and I were destined to be together, because I literally crossed halfway across the globe to be with her and get married. So that's why we're still together 7 years later. So you can take one of those three. And Lumen is launched into that troll. So Boomtown United says, love that. Thank you. You're welcome. So anyway, guys, I'm out. Um, talk to you later. You can catch all this on a replay. Appreciate it.